Welcome back to Post Media's Ottawa-Senators panel. I'm Bruce Garriock with Nick St. Pierre, the play-by-play voice of Unique 94.5 FM of the Senators broadcasts in French. Nick, it's been an adventurous few days here in Ottawa with the trade deadline passing Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Pierre Dorion, a busy man, he dealt Dylan DeMello to the Winnipeg Jets for a third-round pick, moved out Vladislav Namestnikov to the Colorado Avalanche for a third-round pick, sent Tyler Ennis to Edmonton for a fifth-round pick, and also Jean-Gabriel Pageau to the New York Islanders in the biggest deal of the day for a first-round pick, a second-round pick, and a third-round pick. All those picks have conditions on them, but certainly Ottawa will get in the first and second out of that. Let's start with your summary. We'll talk about Pageau next, but let's start with what did you think of what they did at deadline?
Well, we talked about rebuild. I think it was a complete overhaul. The last piece was Pageau. Now nobody can get hurt anymore. So we took the car, we took it to the frame, and now we're going to rebuild. So that was the plan. There's no surprise there. But obviously, it's always hurtful to see some big guys with Pageau, the first name that comes to my mind, leave like that. But now we have to look forward. And looking forward, we have to say that the future is bright for the Senators.
Well, and I look at the negotiations with Jean-Gabriel Pageau. They didn't start till I think the Tuesday of the last week, and I think that's because the Senators did a dance with Matt Duchene last year. They did a dance with Mark Stone. They weren't going to do that dance again. I think they wanted to wait till the last possible minute to see if this could get done. Sunday morning, they changed their offer. They offered Jean-Gabriel Pageau a 5-year deal in excess of $20 million, is my understanding. That deal was turned down. Then they decided to trade him to the New York Islanders in exchange for the package I mentioned earlier. What are your thoughts on that one?
If the intention was to keep Pageau, they would have started talking way before that. At the end of the day, when I see the situation of Jean-Gabriel Pageau, we have to do a parallel to Antoine Vermette a few years back. Why? Because Jean-Gabriel Pageau was never to the Senators what he could be. Because he had some defensive abilities, we made him a third-line center, a third-line guy, PK, defensive thought, and all. This year, we saw that he was way more than that. More offensive, you give him quality time. He could play on a power play. He could play still on the PK, but he was a more whole player. Vermette was asking to have more ice time. Pageau would have loved to have a bigger role here. Unfortunately for the Senators, or unfortunately for Pageau, the Senators didn't see him as that. So it was time to get something for him, trade him, because people around the league recognized that Jean-Gabriel Pageau was way more than his role with the Senators. So Lou Lamoriello fined him that. That's why he gave him that contract. And both parties, I think, as much Pageau is a winner than that, the Senators are a winner because what they got in return.
But not to go on too long about Jean-Gabriel Pageau, but he was an important player here. I think this one probably hurts a little bit more because we're talking about a local guy. Yeah. And you know, there's nothing wrong with a local guy who, you know, grew up watching the team. But I think the Senators are also happy for Pageau that he was able to get that deal. That they weren't because they weren't going to go down that road with him.
How can you justify paying a guy $5 million a season for 6 years? Where are you going to see him in a third line, fourth line center at the end of the day? I mean, like, it made no sense. And I recognize that the guy had a way bigger value. They gave him that with the Islanders, and the Senators could not justify having him on the third line, paying him that much amount. So it makes sense to trade him, and we hope that Pageau is going to be a very good piece for a long time with the Islanders, and we hope that we're going to make good money with those trades that we got back from that trade.
Well, and let's move on to that. The Senators have 9 picks in the first 3 rounds. I'm going to mess this up because I always mess up numbers, but they're going to have 9. They're going to have 9 picks in the first 3 rounds of this draft, right?
13 total.
13 in total. They are going to have 3 picks in the first round, depending on what happens with that Islanders pick. They will have 4 picks in the second round. Nick, I think that you think like me, and in that. They've got to turn some of those second-round picks into players, don't they? And I don't mean players 4 years down the road. I mean, use those picks to get players.
Yeah, you need to short track a little bit on that reset, and we need to have assets, people that can actually have an impact right now with the Senators to help those young players, because like right now there's not a lot of leaders that will help those new core with the Kachuk and the Shabbat. So we need some people to put some meat around the bone. And yes, I see like you, the Dorion has to trade some of those assets, some of those picks to get some active players right now.
Because he's not gonna, and you don't go up to the podium 9 times, so I'm kind of being facetious here. But he's not going to in that second round take 4 players. He's just you. Do you think the answer, because the answer to me, and I haven't discussed this with him, is go find some young players with a little bit of term left who are restricted free agents even, and see if you can bring them in. And I'm talking guys 23, 24 years old, and in exchange for those second round picks.
A little bit like Nemesnikov was like this season. So we need that kind of asset, that kind of players that can add on. And yes, I see Dorion being active at draft day, to be actually be able to bring some support to those guys that are going to be here next year.
I'm going to catch you off guard a little bit because I didn't say we were going to discuss this, but what do you see happening with Borowiecki and Hainsey at the end of this year?
They need leaders, and Borowiecki being Borowiecki, I think they're going to offer him a good offer to stay here, maybe 2 years, and after that, we'll see what happens. And Hainsey, I wouldn't be surprised if he comes back. Like, he's the link between DJ Smith and his locker room, and I think he's appreciated among players, so I think I wouldn't be surprised if Hainsey comes back next year.
That's interesting. A guy who we did see come back this week, and I think everybody's happy to see him, is Bobby Ryan.
Yeah.
We haven't spoken since Bobby Ryan spoke to the media last Friday and told people that he had left to join the NHL Players Assistance Program because he was battling alcoholism. I think that Bobby Ryan strikes me as the kind of guy that you want to cheer for. I think that he was open, he's honest, he's always been very good for us to deal with. I think people wish that Bobby Ryan has success. I think they did before this. But I think they do even more so after this.
I think everybody that watched or heard the game yesterday was cheering and pushing for Ryan to score that goal. We wanted him. It's a great story, and what courageous story it is. And I hope that people that are going through some kind of problems too will take him as an example. I raise his hat. I raise my hat to him. I won't talk about his performance and what he is right now for the Senators on the ice, but as a human factor, I think it's a great story, and I hope the best for Bobby Ryan.
And one of the things I think we've seen is that he is hungry to get back to being that player, isn't he? I mean, he's talked about it. He's talked about he was saying last week he's probably in the best shape of his life. That mentally and physically, he wants to get back to being that player who scored 30 goals in his career.
That could be a turning point, and that could be a good factor as much for him as for the Senators. And we can never give up. The guy is still here for a while, so might as well give him a push and give him as much chances as possible to get back and restart the machine.
There are a lot of there have been a lot of guys moved out here in the last few days. One of the decisions we're going to have to see the Senators make in the next, I would guess, 10 days or so. There's no timetable, so it's a bit of a guessing game here. Is they're going to have to make a decision on their goaltending because Anders Nielsen is practicing regularly with the team. He's going to come back from that concussion, and sooner rather than later. I would guess sooner. Marcus Högberg will likely be sent down to Belleville at that point because Craig Anderson was kept off the deadline. Are you okay with that?
Yes and no. I hope that Högberg's going to take it the right way if that happens. Give him a chance to have a championship push, and the playoffs is going to be good for his experience. But at the end of the day, I think if you ask anybody, and pretty much your first person who's going to say yes to that, like ask any players that coming back from the AHL, where do you prefer to be in any circumstances? He wants to be in the NHL. I hope he's going to take it the right way, and you cannot keep 3 goalies for what's left of the season and what the season is for the Senators. So the best way, I think, would be for Högberg to have a push in the playoffs with the AHL and see coming back in a positive state of mind.
I do think, though, that it is good that Craig Anderson gets the opportunity to finish out his career in an Ottawa uniform.
Yeah.
This is a guy who's been here a decade, 200 wins.
Totally, it's the right way, I think, for him, and it's a good occasion, a good chance for the Senators to close that chapter the right way too. So I hope there's going to be something being done the last game. I don't know, but a way to salute what was Craig Anderson for this organization.
Well, we'll close the chapter on this edition of the Ottawa Senators post-media panel. I'm Bruce Garriock. Thanks again to Nick St. Pierre of Unique 94.5 FM for joining us. We'll see you next week.